I'm a 33-year-old woman, no kids, no husband, financially stable. I run my own consulting firm. Life is quiet, clean, and exactly the way I built it, without a single cent or ounce of support from the family I was born into. I grew up in a mid-sized town in Idaho, the kind of place where everyone knows each other's business before the mail gets delivered. My father, Charles, ran a small chain of hardware stores, not flashy but solid. The stores were inherited from his father, who was apparently some kind of local legend for building something from nothing. My dad loved that line. He repeated it like a sermon. There were just 4 of us in the house growing up, me, my dad, my mom, and my younger brother, Caleb, who's 2 years younger. From the start, it was clear who the heir was. Caleb was the golden boy. My dad didn't even try to hide it. He was being groomed for leadership by the time he was 12, while I was told to help your mother or stay out of the way. When I was 15, I told my dad I wanted to go to college out of state. His exact words? I'm not wasting money on a girl's education. Girls go to college just to find a husband. He said it without flinching. My mom just sat at the kitchen table, staring down at her coffee like she could fall in and disappear. She didn't agree. Not really, but she never argued with him either. I think she was afraid of what would happen if she did. So I left at 18, with a full scholarship and a suitcase that barely zipped. I worked nights at a diner and weekends tutoring math. I took out loans. I ate discount ramen and stretched every penny until it screamed. But I made it through. Graduated top of my class. Got an entry-level job in accounting, then worked my way up into corporate finance. 7 years ago, I started my own consulting firm. I now have 6 employees and more clients than I can handle. Not once has anyone in my family acknowledged any of that. Not when I graduated. Not when I landed my first big promotion. Not when I bought my first house at 28. I sent a Christmas card with a photo of my new place that year. Never heard a word back. Meanwhile, Caleb got a car at 16. He got a job at one of the stores right after high school, and by 22, he was already being referred to as the future CEO. My dad gave him everything: access, mentorship, money, even co-signed on his first house. But Caleb never had a clue what he was doing. He hired the wrong people, let shelves go half empty, didn't know how to manage inventory, and thought Facebook ads were a waste of time. It was a mess. The business started slipping a few years ago. The town had changed, people shopped online more, and big box stores were eating into their base. My dad refused to adapt. He called e-commerce a fad and said real business was done face-to-face. That might have worked in 1980, but not anymore. 2 years ago, they came to me. Not for money. At first, they just wanted advice. I spent a week reviewing their books, inventory data, local trends. I put together a full roadmap: rebranding, digital storefront, local partnerships, a targeted marketing strategy. I gave it to them free, tied in a bow. They didn't follow a single recommendation. Not one. A few months later, they came back again. This time, asking for a loan. I told them flat out, I don't invest in businesses that don't take me seriously. My father hung up on me. Then came last Thanksgiving. Against my better judgment, I went. I thought maybe my mom wanted me there. Maybe things had thawed. They hadn't. My father stood up to make a toast. He raised his glass to Caleb for keeping the family dream alive. Then he turned to me, smirked, and added, and thank you for not dragging us down. Nobody said anything. Not my mom, not Caleb. Just silence, as if it was a perfectly normal thing to say to your daughter. I finished my wine, got up, and left without saying goodbye. Drove home in total silence. No music, no podcasts. Just the sound of tires on pavement and the growing feeling that something had shifted for good. That was the last time I saw any of them face to face. Because that night, I made a decision. If my father was so obsessed with legacy, I was going to make damn sure his ended with me. And I wasn't going to do it with drama. I was going to do it clean, quiet, surgical. The day after that Thanksgiving dinner, I cleaned out my inbox, deleted every old family email, and made a list. At the top of the list, cut the cord. For good. By Monday, I had a consultation scheduled with a lawyer I trust. She handles estate planning, corporate structure, that kind of thing. We sat down in her office, and I explained what I wanted. Simple. Clean. I didn't want a single dollar of my money, business, or retirement to ever touch my family line. No inheritance. No shared trusts. No accidental hand-me-downs. We rewrote my entire will. Every asset, my company shares, real estate, savings, intellectual property, was redirected into a living trust with specific instructions. If anything happens to me, it goes toward a scholarship fund. No exceptions. Next step, I started laying the groundwork for that fund. It's a STEM scholarship for women, launching on my 40th birthday. It'll be merit-based with a focus on underrepresented students from small towns, girls like I used to be, the ones nobody bets on. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, I got an email from Caleb. Subject line, quick favor. The message was 3 paragraphs long, pretending to be casual but clearly desperate. He wanted to know if I could recommend someone who specializes in business restructuring. He claimed he was looking to pivot the company. No mention of what happened over the holiday. I replied the same day, booked until 2042. Not taking clients with misogynist board chairs. No greeting. No signature. He didn't reply. But the next day, my father called. Straight to voicemail. It was a 1-minute rant about how I was spiteful, ungrateful, and cold. He ended it with, women just get emotional. That's why they shouldn't be in charge. I blocked his number before the message even finished playing. I blocked Caleb too. Emails, texts, socials. Wiped it all. A few days later, my aunt messaged me on Facebook. She asked if I was proud of tearing the family apart. I didn't respond, but I did some digging. Turns out my dad had been telling people around town that I was going bankrupt and that my firm was a hollow shell. Classic projection. So I posted a photo on my business page. Nothing flashy, just me standing in my new office, sunlight coming through the windows, and behind me, a massive wall plaque listing our current client portfolio. Caption, thriving. My best friend Liv sent me a laughing emoji and said it was the classiest takedown she'd seen all year. I skipped Christmas entirely. No phone calls, no cards, no fake cheer. Instead, I spent 10 days in Iceland. No family, no drama, just quiet towns, snow-covered lava fields, and long hours in warm cafes. I signed off from everything and came back with half a journal full of new ideas. One of those ideas turned into a personal blog. I started documenting my career journey, not in a motivational way, but in a this is what it actually takes kind of way. From scholarships and loans to late-night spreadsheets and bad bosses. I didn't name names, but I didn't soften any of it either. Within a few weeks, the blog started gaining traction. People were sharing it. A few women reached out to say it reminded them of their own stories. One even told me she forwarded it to her daughter. Then came the final nail. 6 months before, I had quietly formed an LLC. No ties to my real name, no family connection, totally untraceable. Through that LLC, I purchased the commercial property that 2 of my father's hardware stores lease from. They had no idea it was me. The leases expire in 18 months. I've already decided I won't renew them. No announcement, no warnings. Just a quiet shutdown, the same way they ignored every warning sign about digital sales and proper staffing. They chose to run things like it was still 1994. Let them deal with the consequences in real time. And just like that, the legacy my father clung to started slipping through his fingers, while I kept building mine brick by brick, with no help from anyone who shared my last name. A month after locking down the will and finalizing the LLC purchase, I met with a real estate attorney just to double-check the terms of the leases tied to my father's stores. The paperwork was airtight. I had full discretion. If I chose not to renew when they expired in 18 months, there was nothing they could do. No clauses, no protections. Not even a buyout option unless I offered it. A week later, I got an email through the contact form on my blog. No name, just an anonymous address. Attached were 8 photos from inside one of my father's stores. Empty aisles. A broken HVAC unit with a handwritten sign taped to it. Rusty shelves with outdated packaging. One section had a stack of expired caulking tubes that should have been thrown out a year ago. I ran the photos through metadata tools. Timestamps matched. They were real. I hired a private investigator to do a full inspection. On paper, he was acting as a consultant looking for commercial investment opportunities in the area. What he found was worse than I expected. One location had a leaking roof that was patched with tarp and duct tape. The back storage area had mildew along the walls. There was one functioning register, and the employee using it didn't even know how to process a return. No cameras. No clean inventory system. 2 bathrooms, both out of order. According to him, it was a borderline code violation across the board. I contacted my lawyer again and asked about the local ordinances. Turns out, as the property owner, if the business fails a formal code inspection, I can terminate the lease early. No court needed. All I'd have to do is report it. I didn't act right away. I wasn't sure if I wanted to watch it fall apart slowly, or if I wanted to be the one to tip it over. Then out of nowhere, one of Caleb's former employees reached out. She found my blog and figured out who I was. She told me Caleb owed her 3 months of back pay and never gave her a proper separation notice. She sent screenshots, texts, schedules, pay stubs, all legit. That made 3 ex-employees who'd come forward. None of them were looking for anything. They just wanted to vent, share proof, and in one case, warned me that my father was telling people I was trying to destroy the business out of jealousy. I started documenting everything. Not to take legal action. At least not yet, but to keep in my pocket in case they tried to drag my name through the mud publicly. I wasn't going to let them rewrite the story. Around that time, a producer from a small business podcast reached out. One of their researchers had read my blog and wanted to feature my story, anonymously, if needed. I haven't said yes yet, but I bookmarked the email. Then came the letter from my mom. Handwritten, shaky, probably mailed from the library because I doubt she knew how to use email. She said she regretted staying silent over the years, but she hoped I could show mercy before it was too late. I didn't respond. 3 days later, I got an email from a business broker representing an interested party. It didn't take long to figure out who it was. Caleb was trying to sell the hardware stores to me. He called it a strategic family handoff, offered it at a steep discount, citing changing market conditions and real estate value. I replied with a formal letter offering $1, not a typo. $1 single. I told them I'd bulldoze the stores and plant trees. There was no response. But I did get a DM from Caleb's wife on Instagram. She told me I was tearing apart something bigger than myself. I didn't reply to her either. A week later, my father showed up at my office. He made it past the building's front desk, but got stopped at my firm's reception. Security escorted him out before he could step into the main hallway. He left behind a sealed envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, written in all caps with shaky handwriting, "Your success is hollow. Family is forever." I threw it in the shredder. But I kept the envelope. I don't know why. That night, I started journaling again. Not to document anything. Not to process what happened. Just to clear my head. Nothing in that journal is about them. It's the first time in my life I'm writing and not waiting for someone to notice. Meanwhile, the stores are getting quieter. My source said they let go of another part-timer last week. And I haven't even started pressing yet. I decided not to pull the plug early. Legally, I could have reported them for code violations and shut the stores down within weeks. But it was more effective to let it rot slowly. The leases expire in 18 months. I can wait. Watching them unravel in real time, without lifting a finger, has its own kind of impact. While the stores limped along, I listed the properties for sale, quietly. The listings went up through a private broker, listed under the LLC. No names, no breadcrumbs. Just commercial real estate with redevelopment potential. A few weeks in, a regional development firm reached out. They were looking to build mixed-use housing and a co-op grocery. Focused on sustainability, women-led, community-centered. The irony practically wrote itself. They loved the location and asked for an appraisal. I ordered a full evaluation from an independent assessor. The numbers came back higher than I expected. Even with the buildings in poor shape, the land alone was worth more than the whole hardware chain had made the last fiscal year. Meanwhile, the internal collapse continued. One of my contacts, a former employee of Caleb's, forwarded me a mass layoff email. Caleb had cut half the remaining staff, blaming seasonal downturns and budget realignment. The email was riddled with spelling errors and copy-pasted legal disclaimers. He didn't even blind copy the recipients. Total amateur hour. At this point, 3 former employees now send me updates regularly. I never asked. They just want to see him fail. One even started a private Slack group with others who've worked under him. Apparently, it's part venting space, part documentation hub. Then came the internal email leak. One of the ex-staff still had access to a shared mailbox. She forwarded me a thread where Caleb blamed everything on a greedy landlord who had raised the lease rates without warning. He claimed they were being financially bullied and would be forced to close if they couldn't negotiate new terms. He never once mentioned that the lease hadn't changed and that the landlord was me. I sent the thread, anonymously, to a local reporter who covers small business issues. 3 days later, the article went live. Headline: Is mismanagement or market change killing this local hardware chain? The piece was brutal. No defamation, just facts. Employee turnover, empty shelves, declining revenue, poor leadership. Caleb lost it. He posted a Facebook rant calling out traitors, snakes, and fake feminists who ruin local business with their egos. Caps lock, emoji abuse, typos everywhere. The comment section got wild. Some of his friends chimed in, others called him out, and a few posted links to the article under his own post. Then he tried to message me. A burner Facebook profile, no photo, weird name, barely any info. The message just said, "We need to talk. There's still time to fix this," but the phrasing was familiar. Caleb's writing style is easy to spot once you've read enough of his desperate pitches. I blocked the account instantly. Then I shut down my old Facebook altogether. Deactivated it. Wiped everything. No friends list, no tagged photos, no mutuals to use as messengers. I wasn't giving them another way in. That same week, a letter showed up at my office, hand-delivered. My receptionist recognized the handwriting from the last time and tossed it in the shredder, just like I told her. It was from my mom. She hasn't spoken to me in person in over a year, but she's still trying to send messages through side doors. The last one said she hoped I'd remember who your real family is. I guess this one didn't get a chance. At my next therapy session, I brought it up. Not the drama, just the strange quiet. I'm technically winning, my company is thriving, the properties are valuable, and the legacy they worshipped is cracking, but it doesn't feel like a celebration. Then my broker called with a heads up. One of the buyers interested in the properties was backed by a silent investor. That investor used to be involved with Caleb's expansion plan years ago. It was the same guy who tried to franchise the stores before everything tanked. I pulled the offer. Relisted quietly. Back to watching the clock run out. On them, not me. After pulling the last buyer, the listing sat for 3 more weeks before a new inquiry came in. This time, it was from a women-led development group based 2 towns over. They had plans to redevelop the property into low-rise housing and a co-op grocery, exactly the kind of thing the town actually needs now. The best part? They had zero interest in renewing the current leases. Their project timeline starts 4 months before Caleb's lease is set to expire. I didn't even have to ask. They already planned to clear the buildings. With the deal almost sealed, I made one more move quietly. I sent an anonymous $5,000 donation to one of the ex-employees who first leaked Caleb's store conditions. She'd mentioned going back to school. A few weeks later, I saw on LinkedIn that she enrolled in a design certification course. She never knew the money came from me. Around that same time, I started drafting a book. Just something small, building off my blog. The working title, Generational Failure Isn't Genetic. It's not a memoir, it's a blueprint. Career decisions, boundaries, exit plans. No sugarcoating. The blog's grown more than I expected. A gender studies professor from a state university reached out to ask if she could quote one of the posts for her syllabus. Another reader messaged me screenshots of her company's Slack chat, where my blog had become required reading in a mentoring group. Meanwhile, back in my hometown, my father's version of the story is spreading. An old high school friend, one of the few neutral ones left, messaged me. Apparently, my dad's telling people I ran a smear campaign out of jealousy, that I couldn't handle being outshined by Caleb, so I torched the business out of spite. I didn't respond to the rumors. I wrote a blog post instead. It wasn't angry, just direct. I laid out the full timeline, what I was offered, what I declined, what I documented. I ended it by saying, this wasn't revenge. This was me saying no, loud enough for them to hear it this time. I finally accepted the podcast interview that had been sitting in my inbox. We recorded it over Zoom, edited it for privacy, and it went live on a Tuesday morning. By that evening, my inbox was flooded. Small business owners, students, teachers, strange daughters, people who'd never spoken up until they heard someone else go first. 2 women in business conferences sent speaking invitations. I accepted one. I'll be a panelist next fall. And then something happened that I didn't expect. A letter arrived at my office, addressed in careful handwriting. Inside was a note from Caleb's 7-year-old daughter. She said she didn't understand everything that was happening, but she hoped we could be friends one day. She liked art and swings and her new shoes. It was sweet. It was innocent. That night, I cried for the first time in months. Not for Caleb, not for my father, for her. For what she might grow up believing if no one ever teaches her to question it. At my next therapy session, I brought up the letter. My therapist said something that stuck. Generational change isn't clean. It starts with discomfort. She's right. I'm not here to save them. But maybe I can carve a new path for someone else. The scholarship fund paperwork is officially filed now. It's real. The name on it isn't mine. It's my grandmother's, Eleanor, my dad's mother. Quiet, brilliant, and ignored in all the same ways. Liv offered to help manage the fund. She's not just a best friend anymore, she's family. The kind I got to choose. Last weekend, I drove through town for the first time in 5 years. I didn't stop, just slowed down as I passed one of the stores. The windows were dusty. The sign was half faded. No lights. No cars in the lot. Just a dead storefront clinging to a name that doesn't mean anything anymore. A few weeks ago, I got a forwarded email from someone I hadn't spoken to in years, my old college roommate Jenna. She works in regional grant funding now, mostly small business development programs. The forwarded message was a funding application. The name on it wasn't familiar, but the wording gave it away almost instantly. Phrases like resilient local entrepreneur, blindsided by predatory leasing, and fighting to preserve a family legacy. It was Caleb, trying to get state-backed financial support using buzzwords he barely understood. Here's the twist: I've been consulting for that exact grant program since early spring. I'm not a decision maker, but I help evaluate viability and risk. Caleb had no idea I was even in the loop. I recused myself from the review panel immediately to keep it clean, but I did inform the board that the applicant had a history of operational mismanagement, unpaid staff, and multiple failed restructuring attempts. They flagged the file. 3 days later, the application was officially rejected. The formal reasoning? Unfit for operational independence. I didn't plan on hearing from him again after that, but less than 2 weeks later, my firm's general inbox got a new inquiry. The sender claimed to be with a company called West Pines Tools, looking for help optimizing a regional supply chain model. The writing style was familiar. Too familiar. Same grammar quirks. Same overuse of passive voice. I had it trace the email's metadata. It pinged back to a device associated with Caleb's previous business registration. And another burner. We blocked the domain permanently. After that, I asked my tech guy to build out a digital firewall, personal and professional, website protections, IP tracing, social blocks, and admin-only access across all platforms. No more loopholes. No more random messages slipping through. Around the same time, an ex-employee contacted me through Proton Mail. Said 2 of the remaining stores were expected to shut down by end of quarter. One already cut operating hours to just weekends. The other had no functioning HVAC and was using plug-in fans to keep the place open. That same week, my aunt, dad's sister, reached out through a mutual connection. Not directly. Just to pass this along type of message. They were organizing a family estate auction to clear things out. I wanted to know if I was interested in attending or taking anything sentimental. I sent back a single line: your auction, your mess. I'm not your legacy cleanup crew. Then came the fire. One of the storefronts, ironically the one where Caleb first started as a cashier, had an electrical short in the back room. Years of neglected wiring, overloaded circuits, and a broken exhaust fan. It didn't burn the building down, but the smoke damage hit everything in storage. The insurance payout barely covered the cleanup. 2 days later, the online store for their chain announced an end-of-line inventory clearance. I browsed through it out of curiosity. Most of it was outdated tools and dusty clearance paint, but there was one item that stood out: a single 16-ounce claw hammer. I bought it. When it arrived, I opened the box in my office and just stared at it for a while. No engraving, no special markings, just a plain hammer from a dying business. I put it on the shelf next to a framed copy of my scholarship trust paperwork. Quiet contrast. Last week, the development firm officially signed on the dotted line. The buildings will be raised in 6 months. Their permits are already in motion. The architectural drafts are public now. Nothing from the old structure will remain. One last message came in. Caleb's wife used her sister's account to send it, said they were worried about the children, that the situation was hurting people who had nothing to do with the past. It was a long message. Emotional. Guilt-laced. I didn't answer. Silence is the only thing they ever gave me. Now it's what they get in return. The demolition started on a Monday morning. No ceremony, no audience. Just me standing across the street with a coffee in hand while the bulldozer tore through the front wall of the first store my father ever opened. It was fast. A few hours later, the roof was gone. By the afternoon, the structure was nothing but a pile of bricks and broken signage. The crew didn't even pause. Construction fencing went up that same day. A temporary sign hung from the barrier: future site of Juniper Commons, women-led living. I didn't take a photo. I didn't speak to anyone. I watched. Then I left. The next morning, I published my final blog post. Title: Not Every Legacy Deserves to Survive. It marked the end of that chapter. No dramatics. Just facts, lessons, and a clean close. The development team invited me to say a few words at the groundbreaking event. I declined. I wasn't doing this for the press or the praise. I didn't need a podium to validate what was already done. That same week, the Eleanor M. Foundation officially launched, named after my grandmother, my dad's mother. Quiet, overlooked, but smart as hell. The scholarship fund awarded its first round. 5 recipients. 2 in mechanical engineering, or in architecture, 1 in chemistry, 1 in computer science. Each of them sent handwritten thank you letters. One of them said she planned to use her degree to start a nonprofit of her own one day. That one now sits framed on my desk. Through a mutual contact, I heard my father isn't doing well. His health is declining. Finance is worse. I didn't follow up. I didn't send anything. I didn't feel anything. A few days after the auction, someone tagged me in a photo on social media, items from the sale, a plaque with my dad's name on it, a dusty family portrait, the rusted store sign from the original building. I blocked the account without reading the comments. There were no last-minute apologies. No letters. No apologies from Caleb. Nothing from my mom. No one reached out again. And that, honestly, was the final closure I didn't know I needed. The last parcel of property sold last week. With that, my family no longer owns a single square foot of the town they once bragged about building. Not 1 square inch. I updated my will one last time. No living family member can contest it. The paperwork is locked, notarized, and backed up across 3 legal platforms. They can't touch a thing. A few days ago, I drove out to the cemetery where my grandfather is buried. I left a single white stone on his grave. No flowers. No note. Just a whisper. It ends with me. I live in a small cottage by the coast now. Mornings are for walks. Evenings are for books. No legacy to protect. No expectations to carry. Just me. Finally. just me.